Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady back. It is Kay Smythe-Hill. She, of course, is a great news and commentary writer, and you see her on Newsmax all the time. Go to millionvoices.org to see what she writes and gets done there. Kay, how are you? Good to see you.
Oh, I'm good. I've got a little bit of brain fog today. I feel like I have this flu that everyone's been getting, and it's just been lingering for weeks. But I don't know about you, Joe. We've got some beautiful weather here in North Carolina today. We've had a couple of days of plus 60.
Finally got a couple of nice weather days here in Texas. It was too cold for too long, and now it's almost too warm because after it's been cold for a long time, you don't want it to be like 80. It should be maybe 73. But we'll take this over the cold stuff anytime. I won't get into why you have the brain fog. That's for a different show at a different time with a different audience. But Kay told me why the brain fog happened, and it's a very interesting theory. Let's get into some things though. President Trump came in. And like he did the first time, he made a bunch of promises on the campaign trail. He achieved a lot of them the first time, but there was a lot of deep state pull against him the first time. You had anonymous people writing stories from inside the White House, for God's sakes. You had people stabbing in the back every turn. He's learned. Clearly, he's learned in the period between 16 and 24. And promises made, promises kept. His agenda has been breakneck speed in the first 2 weeks, Guy.
I mean, that's the absolute best way to describe it, Joe. Like breakneck speed. I mean, the number of changes and the speed at which those changes have been implemented, they're kind of meteoric. I mean, I hope everyone got to see Trump kind of go at it with Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, because that was the prime example of how stupid Democrats can be. So context, obviously we've had these horrific wildfires across Los Angeles. People want to go in and start clearing up their homes, and the local government is basically saying, no, you can't go in and go through your homes. Like, we're going to wait until the cleanup's right, blah, blah. And as they're talking about this at this press conference, you've got Karen Bass, who I don't know anyone in LA who voted for her, and I remember her election happening. I don't know how she won. That's for probably for a different show. Yes. But you've got Karen Bass, and then you've got Trump, and as she's saying oh well, we've got to wait for the clean. Trump just leans in and basically goes, wrong. If there are people willing to go in to do the cleanup, you're going to let them in to do why would we wait around for all of this trashy government bureaucracy? I'm obviously paraphrasing and not directly quoting President Trump now.
But there's one part that I want to make sure that we put out there. There's a guy, a resident sitting right in front of them who said, I want to go and clean up. I want to go and take care of my stuff. I want to get my life back in order. And she's going, yeah, you'll be able to eventually. And Trump said, no, he wants to do it tonight. You do it tonight, wouldn't you? He points to the guy and he says, you do it tonight, wouldn't you? The guy's like, hell yeah, I'll do it tonight. Oh, he wants to do it tonight. She's like, oh, okay, I guess he can. You know what I mean? So it took that. This, I think, is why, and you made such a great point. This is why people on the left don't want to sit down with people on the right, because they know they're now exposed. They can't pretend the righties are lying or are wrong, because those of us on the right will tell you, this is why I'm right, and this is why you're wrong, and let the guy go clean up his yard. And the end result was she either lied and said that he could clean up his yard, or she truly will allow them, and not that she should have any say, will allow them to go clean up their yard. I mean, it was that Kay, that's why they don't meet, right? The left doesn't want to meet with the right.
Absolutely. And it's probably one of my favorite things to, especially to explain to my British friends and family, because they sort of sit there and go, oh my gosh, Trump's dismantling everything. It's going to be so much worse for another prime example of something that's happened at breakneck speed in the last couple of weeks. The immigration policy reversals, the fact that ICE is out there cracking down on illegal immigrants. I mean, that literally happened overnight. And so it's funny, I was at my local Aldi the other day, and heard this woman sort of, she was speaking in an English accent. So I was like, oh, where are you from? And she goes, England. And I was just like, I want to be that.
Pretty big place.
Duh. But I was like, oh, that's cool. I am from Swansea. So we got to chatting, and, I sort of mentioned that I'm going through a visa renewal or a change of status right now because I just got married. And she was like, oh, it's going to be a lot harder under Trump. And this woman's lived here for a lot longer than me. And so I kind of explained, actually, no, it's not. Here's what all British people get wrong about Democrats versus Republicans. Democrats do an incredible job of making loads of money for themselves and for their friends out of trashy government bureaucracy, out of the absolute, there are so many examples of this that we could get into. I wouldn't be surprised if half of the charities that claim that they're like working with illegal immigrants are literally just taking our money, the taxpayers. They're just taking our money because there's someone who runs that nonprofit who's probably friends with or is a big donor to some Democratic politician. It is one of the most corrupt systems. We saw it with the homeless crisis in Los Angeles too. And so I was kind of explaining to this woman, like, no, Democrats like to cause problems and slow things down and not solve problems because it makes them a huge amount of money.
Yes.
Republicans like to come in, streamline everything so people like you and I can make more money because they realize that the more money we make, the more money goes into our system, the better our country becomes, whereas Democrats just want to enrich themselves, which is probably
well, a prime
why...
example. Let me stop you, because a prime example is what you educated me on several years ago. The homeless situation in California. They've thrown $25 billion at it now in aggregate over the years, and it's gotten exponentially worse. It keeps getting, the more billions they throw, the worse it gets. Trump would come in, let's cut off the funding to all these NGOs and all these special interest groups, and let's actually give these people a place to live and get them off drugs. That's it. It's the difference between a healthcare system that wants you to constantly take medicine and a healthcare system that wants to solve your problem.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that is so perfectly put. So that's essentially, what we're seeing, I think, from these first couple of weeks of Trump in office is him coming in and saying, like, sorry, no idiots at the table anymore. We're here to solve problems. And I, for one, am absolutely here for it. And I'm very excited. And again, Joe, I have firsthand experience of this. Under both Obama and under Biden, my immigration process was a nightmare. Under Trump, cleanest and most fluid it's ever been. If you do the right paperwork, it is better to live under Republicans. If you don't want to try, if you don't want to make an effort, if you just want to be if you just want to live off the government and kind of just contribute nothing, then things are better, way better under Democrats. The social systems are there for you to never get ahead, but also never have to try.
Were you able to make this woman from England understand that it is better under Trump, or is she now indoctrinated by the left in this country?
Honestly, I was having one of those days where I didn't really care about what she had to say at that point. It was that same sort of like British mentality of, I don't know, like, I think we talked about this last week, like British people hate success and happiness. And so that's why British people, as much as they want to be successful and happy, and that's what they claim to strive for, culturally, that is not the vibe. Anyone who gets successful or happy is kind of made fun of, actually. In Britain. And I'm not just speaking from like firsthand experience. Pretty much all of the most successful people I know, other than one guy who's the most miserable guy I know, but he's very successful. Other than one British guy, all of the other Brits I know prefer America, prefer Americans, because people here want to do better than...
And we celebrate success. We're happy about success.
Yeah, there's like celebrations of, and that's again why everyone's celebrating. I mean, the fact that more than well over half the country voted for Trump, and now he's going out and doing all of the things he said he was going to do. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of all of this. Like, people freaking, oh, he's like reversing all the DEI, oh, like energy independent, immigration, blah. Everyone's like freaking out. And it's just like, why do you think everyone voted for him?
Is that how they sound?
Shut up. Yeah,
it is Kay Smythe Hill. Go follow Kay Smythe at Kay Smythe over on all the social media, kaysmythe.com. And again, Kay Smythe Hill, she's now gotten married. Let's talk about the 10 Commandments in school is a sticky one. I believe they belong there. It's an historical document. It's an historical value set that goes into our system in Western civilization, Judeo-Christian. Nothing wrong with saying these are the 10 Commandments. A lot of our laws are based on this. Of course, the left and the atheists will say it doesn't belong because of that First Amendment, the first clause, the establishment, and the separation of church and state. So how are they getting away with this? That we are now seeing the 10 Commandments show back up in school?
So this is actually super cool. I didn't know the history of this sort of movement then to get the Ten Commandments back in school until today. It all started after, I think his name was Joe Kennedy, the football coach from, and he was somewhere in Washington.
I don't know.
He got
the guy who kneeled on the field.
So he would pray at the 50-yard line at every game. He got fired. He sued. His case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won. And so that ruling essentially overturned a precedent, Joe, that's only been in place, literally only been in place for 40 years. I think it's called like the Lemon something.
You're right. You're right, by the way. It is Joseph Kennedy. Go ahead.
Yeah. So brilliant educator, like big shout out to Joe Kennedy. But so his case actually overturned this precedent, the Lemon ruling or whatever it was. Like, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. That essentially stipulated we're supposed to have this like mass separation of church and state. Like, it doesn't actually, when you break down into the law of it, all of the laws separating sort of religious free speech from our educational institutions comes from this one precedent. But because that has now been overturned because of the 2022 ruling, loads of states are now pushing local level legislation to get the Ten Commandments. It's basically just a poster of the Ten Commandments along with a little display that'll explain the historical context of the Ten Commandments. Plus, you'll get education about it throughout the sort of school curriculum, particularly to do with what you were saying, like the fact that this country was pretty much founded upon all those principles. But here's the thing that blew my mind, Joe. Here's the craziest part of this whole story. So back in 1690, the first American educational textbook was released by a guy out of Boston, and it sort of became the go-to textbook that everyone used for what would be at that point first grade education. But you look through it and you're like, wow, I can't believe kids were doing so much at that age at that time. But there was a whole huge section in this textbook on the Ten Commandments about why it was so valuable, why it is so valuable, so important, along with, I think it was something like 43 different questions for kids to answer about the Ten Commandments. So we had from 1690 up to about 1980, Ten Commandments were basically part of core curriculum. And then we've had this like 45-year experiment of taking God basically out of our classrooms in many ways. And I don't know, Joe, I just like asked myself when I learned this, like, were things better for those 290 years that the Ten Commandments were part of our core curriculum, or have things gotten better over the last 45 years? Because I think we're in a massive state of social devolution, and there's a lot of things that line up with removing Christianity from our society in a meaningful way that, that sort of timing, there's something there. I don't know the full science on it, but there's something there.
I want to throw a little something out there. By the way, it's Kay Smythe Hill. Go to kaysmythe.com. Go to @KSmythe. And again, Kay Smythe Hill. Check her out on Newsmax TV. Go to millionvoices.org. Just a little bit of a primer, if you will, about the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause. It simply says Congress shall pass no law in regard to establishing a religion. This was in response to King George III making everybody be Anglican over in Great Britain. That's why we separated. That's why we won the Revolutionary War. We wanted to freely speak, freely worship, do whatever we want. That part, they're calling it the Establishment Clause. The government can't, the Congress can't make a law saying that we all have to be Jewish or Islamic or Christian or whatever. And that's very simple. It doesn't say anything about having 10 commandments in school. There is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. In fact, most people who talk about the Establishment Clause ignore the fact that it also goes on to saying you can worship however you see fit. They can't pass any law stopping you from worshiping. So the guy taking a knee in the football field obviously is covered by the First Amendment. The separation of church and state, as you probably know, was a letter from Theodore Roosevelt. No, from Thomas Jefferson to a Baptist church, and in which he said, "We will not get in your way of doing what you want to do as a church. The government will not get in your way. We will remain. We will keep consistent that separation between church and state. In other words, the state won't get involved in your church. It doesn't say the church can't get involved in something that is funded by the taxpayers. So this has been perverted for a very long time, since the 1950s when they started kicking the Bible out of school. I'm so glad we're doing a full circle and saying, hey, wait a second. There's nothing in our laws, there's nothing in how we were established, how we were founded, that says you can't have a symbol of religion, or that is seen as a religious symbol that's also historical, hanging on the wall. So I'm glad that it's happening. But people are so confused, because if you argue with that lady who's from England, she's going to say, no, you've got the separation of church and state. And, the answer is no, we don't. There never has been a separation of church and state. In fact, the first body to print the Holy Bible in this country was the House of Representatives. So let's get a clue. You know what I'm saying? I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, duh.
Duh. So those who hear separation of church and state, ask people who say that to you to show it to you in the Constitution. It doesn't exist. Ask them what it's based on. They don't know. It's that letter from Thomas Jefferson. And ask them, well, what about the whole I can worship as I see fit part? Why can't I bring my Bible to school? And then just shut up and let them answer. It's Case Smythe Hill. Let's do one last one. Let's do those who refused the COVID vaccine, which is not really a vaccine, because a vaccine is perfect. This is not. It doesn't stop you from getting COVID, so it never was a vaccine. But they were kicked out of the military. Either get the shot or you're out. And Trump is now welcoming them all back. That's got to be a big deal. You're not far from a base there in North Carolina. That's got to be a big deal.
It's an absolutely huge deal. And I don't think it's even just a huge deal for those who I'm hoping are also going to get the back pay that they were promised for the time that they were relieved of their duties because they wouldn't, subject themselves to an experimental drug. I think that this is just another example of Trump keeping the promises he campaigned upon. So I think that is, again, historic in and of itself. I think it's absolutely huge for the individuals. But I also think it sort of sets a really wonderful precedent for anyone considering joining our military forces over the next few years while we're under the Trump administration,
yes.
and what I hope eventually becomes the Vance administration. So, potentially like 12
Vance.
years of this.
You say Vance?
Yeah, I can't say Vance.
His name is not J.D. Vance.
But it is. It's J.D. Vance. Is this going to become another one now? I can't even remember what the other words
Vice
are.
President J.D. Vance. Listen, you're right. Already recruitment is up. Pete Hegseth's getting that job has already made the recruitment go up. He probably will get some Hollywood producer to produce some big, great ad campaign for recruitment to go up. The
Taylor
people who
Sheridan.
sign up, I think Taylor Sheridan would be great. The people who want to sign up, want to defend the Constitution and our freedoms and liberties, want to feel like somebody's got their back, and they're not showing them the door because they won't take an unnecessary, medical procedure in their arm, or else they get kicked out. I mean, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, and you also want intelligent people in our armed forces. Like, yes. I think that's one of the most important things. You want people who are going to stand up for like real American values.
Yeah.
And as we saw in November, and Joe, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the number of people, I was on a flight last week, and this woman just leaned in as we were chatting about something unrelated, and goes, "So I'm guessing you guys aren't vaxxers?" And me and John were like, "Ew, no." And she was like, "Oh yeah, no, me either. We had to tell everyone we were, but we're not." And I'm like, "Oh, I wonder how many other people are the same." Goodbye.
Yeah. Gotta go. No, you're amazing. We should do a 30-minute thing at some point, because the information is amazing. Love hearing your knowledge, but I gotta go. Hey, you're the best.
You're the
We'll
best.
talk to you next week. All right, we're back after this. Stay right here.